The best part of this whole goddamn thing is that he is not martyr material, so his death will mean nothing. It will activate no one. It will impact few. It's just great.
A few moments later.
You know, that has to go down as one of the worst takes of all time. I really wonder how she feels about it today. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the Charlie Kirk effect is absolutely real. It has been an ignition switch on the political right. It has caused mass panic on the political left. In short, they had no idea of the sleeping giant that they were awaking just a few weeks ago. And the evidence of this is everywhere. Whether it's the massive crowd at the funeral that packed a football stadium and then some, or the energy seen last night at the first ever Turning Point campus tour stop at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, deep in Tim Walz's territory, it's everywhere. But here's the thing. If you want to sit there and say that crowd sizes don't truly determine the nature of politics, if you want to say, oh, Turning Point had an audience, obviously, and they're galvanized, but it's niche, right? As the girl said in the beginning, it's not really going to have this profound impact on the national political scene. Ladies and gentlemen, you would also be mistaken in that. As I said at the time, this was not a minor thing. This is not about just some social media guy getting killed. This is a national political earthquake, and the proof empirically is in the pudding. Because if you didn't know, we actually have some major elections this year in America, particularly the governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia. And it's interesting because one of the last things that Charlie ever did with his life was convert a lot of the TPUSA campus grassroots infrastructure into Turning Point Action, which was a mission in the 2024 election to turn out Republican voters. The thesis and the conclusion from the midterms and prior elections was not that, oh, Republicans are the minority in America, but rather that when Donald Trump's name is not on the ballot, they struggle to show up to vote. And it's almost poetic that in his final act, one of his great life missions, among many others, obviously, seems like it was starting to be fulfilled as a result. Because, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of weeks ago, if you asked me about the New Jersey's governor's race or the Virginia's governor's race, I would have told you GOP seems dead on arrival. Not because they don't have the support, they don't have the energy, they don't have the turnout. It's just complacency, right? But in the span of the few weeks since, this entire picture has shifted. So I want to talk about this today. As well as, voter registration trends we've seen, again, in the past 2 weeks in swing states, national polls for Democrats, and the very interesting new narrative on this so-called term of Christian nationalism that you're hearing from the media now that further demonstrates the same exact panic. And why is that? Because they're realizing a lot of people before who maybe were casually following politics, or they're religious Christians that also casually followed politics, are now like really into this stuff. And this very small minority of lunatic radicals in America is realizing, oh shoot, these people have always been there. We've basically been allowed to run around scot-free because they weren't provoked enough. Now they've been provoked, and now there is something of a whiplash coming, and that's in a peaceful sense. And we'll talk about that. So guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate your support here. And that said, so let's start by talking about the Virginia's governor's race, or Virginia governor's race, I guess I should say there. Because thus far, this has not been a good picture for Republicans. You have Winsome Sears, who is, I believe, currently the lieutenant governor. She's running against a Democrat, but the campaign is underfunded. It's not being that well managed. It seemed like she was probably going to get blown out in this. And of course, Democrats were going to run around and say, oh, look, that's a referendum on Trump. But no, in reality, it's just a referendum on, again, how Republicans are not energized when Trump is not energizing them on their behalf, right? But ever since, look at where we are now with the Virginia early vote turnout in the recent month of September. This is the turnout percentage as of 2024 in deep red areas versus deep blue areas. So as you can see, Dinwiddie, which went for Trump by 23 points in 2024, is at 82% turnout. Goochland, 72% turnout. And Hanover, another red area, at 63% turnout. Now, this is notable for a number of reasons, but even most of all, the fact that usually Republicans are always trailing in early vote turnout, right? They kind of procrastinate till later. It's more of a Democrat thing. This was big in 2024. Hey, make sure you actually go out to vote. Don't wait till the last minute. Look what's happening now, right? Contrast that to the Democrat areas. Charlottesville, which went for Kamala by 68 points, only at 42% turnout. Arlington at 32, Petersburg at 30. So, look, I don't know what's going to happen in these races. I would still say Democrats are kind of the favorite, just given, hey, Virginia is a state that obviously voted for Kamala. Glenn Youngkin kind of won by a miracle in 2021. But who knows? I would say now this race just became competitive. It was just locked for the Democrats. And again, the effect here that's had on actually turning out Republican voters who usually are not this adamant about it, right? 82% turnout of 2024 already. It's September, guys. The election's in November is insane. And it doesn't stop there. Let's also look at the New Jersey's governor's race, where Jack Ciattarelli, who is the Republican running once again, you might remember he almost came very close to flipping the governor's seat red back in 2021. A new poll just came out. By the way, this is the most accurate poll from the 2021 election. This is an internal from National Research, polled 600 likely voters in New Jersey. Shows Jack Ciattarelli actually beating Mikie Sherill by 1 point, right? 46% to 45%. And look at this, among independent voters, unaffiliated, Ciattarelli leads by 21 points. Now, this is not me adamantly saying, oh, he's going to win. But again, it's showing a virtual tie. This race is extremely competitive. It's now going to come down to the very wire. And the betting markets seem to agree the same. Kalshi is showing that, well, this is an internal poll, so take with some salt. But it's undeniable on how well Sherill will do has actually shifted in the recent weeks. Last week, the Democrat Mikie Sherill was at a 28% chance to win by 14 points or more, the likeliest margin. Now traders think that there's only a 54% chance that she ekes out a win by 4 points or less, right? Look at how that chart has changed. Everyone's starting to realize, oh shoot, last couple of weeks, because of what's happened, this is now a competitive election. And by the way, it doesn't exactly help the Democrats' case here that at the same time on Sunday that Charlie Kirk's funeral was going on, Jack Ciattarelli was absolutely pummeling the Democrat Mikie Sherill during that debate. So looking up, looking a lot better in New Jersey as well.
Doesn't matter, because I'm going to make sure that he doesn't get to serve again when I win for governor in November of this year.
There's another big difference between her public service and my public service. It actually cost me money the time I put in and took away from my company. In the 7 years that she's been in Congress, she's tripled her net worth. There's another big difference between the two of us, okay? She broke the law. She had to pay fines for violating federal law on stock trades and stock reporting, and the New York Times reports that while you're sitting on the House Armed Services Committee, you were trading defense stocks.
Oh, and by the way, to add more fuel to the fire, the Democrat candidate in this New Jersey race, Representative Mikie Sherill, who is currently in Congress, not only acted arrogant, but also in the process highly idiotic in that debate. She's also issuing highly idiotic statements on Charlie Kirk. Brilliant on the Democrats' part, right? How could you implode this badly? You were projected to win by over 10 points. And then here you are at a moment where the right wing is galvanized. And you know, Democrats are basically now trying to search for any reason to keep them home, right? Don't get them too energized because we're just going to ride off the anti-incumbent energy and win. And then what does she do? She releases this. Representative Mikie Sherill's statement on House passage of the Charlie Kirk resolution. I've taken countless oaths to the Constitution throughout my life, through the Naval Academy and all this stuff. I believe in free speech and that the First Amendment wouldn't be necessary if it were only meant to cover language we agreed with. It's meant to protect people like Charlie Kirk who present vile dissenting views, but it's also meant to protect teachers, doctors, and TV comedians. Charlie Kirk was advocating for a Christian nationalist government and to roll back the rights of women and black people. This flies in the face of every value I hold dear and that I fight for. You're really going here while running for the New Jersey governor's race, noticing right now, right, how much conservatives are galvanized and fired up over what happened. Brilliant. Just great political strategy, Sherill. The Constitution protects free speech, even for those I oppose. Meanwhile, President Trump is this bad. He denounced Kirk's politically motivated killing, while on the other hand is instigating a witch hunt worthy of Joseph McCarthy to shut down the free speech rights of anyone who disagrees with Kirk's racist, anti-American views. Charlie Kirk's murder was horrific, and it's up to all of us to stand against political violence, but clearly not that much, right? In these times, I will continue to condemn political violence, racism, attacks on women, and the hypocrisy coming from Trump and his acolytes. I will never give up on protecting the rights and the freedoms that we hold sacred. Very smart of you. Very smart of you. And by the way, so there you see, right? Republican surge in turnout in Virginia. The polls and the betting markets narrowing heavily in New Jersey. It's not just refined to these 2025 elections. But I will say, by the way, just as the disclaimer, if you live in those states, make sure you vote, okay? There's my obligatory statement. Make sure you do it. All right, that said. So you're also seeing this in the registration data in other states. Real Political Data points out that the Kirk effect is real. In North Carolina, the latest update, which was dropped like a couple days ago, was the biggest net gain for the GOP in voter registration data in the last 6 months, and by a very wide margin, with the update the week of Kirk's death being the third biggest net gain. So here's the most recent one, right? Actually, let me zoom out there. So you can see, this is voter registration data in the state of North Carolina. On average this year, the GOP has gotten a net gain. In May, they actually lost voters. But you can see, right, like 500 to 1,000, a couple over 1,000. Look at this one right here. That's just in the past few weeks alone. And it's a trend you're also seeing in Pennsylvania, where Republicans just gained over 3,000 voter registrations in the past week, more than triple of the previous week's gains. Again, guys, the Charlie Kirk effect is real, and these people do not understand what they just did. And by the way, if you think these situations getting any better nationally speaking for Democrats, it is not. Take a listen.
What do you think?
Yeah, what are we seeing? Donald Trump being underwater, Democrats saying, oh, this guarantees us we're going to fly high in the midterms. Let me tell you, this guarantees you nothing, because at this particular point, the Democrats are the New Orleans Saints of political parties. What are we talking about? Trust the Dems or GOP more on the economy? Who leads on the economy? Republicans by 7. Immigration, Republicans by 13. How about crime? A big issue for Donald Trump and the Republicans. Look at that. Lead by 22 points. So the bottom line is this. At this particular point, the ball may be on the ground, but the Democrats have not picked up the ball and running with it. If anything, at this particular point, it's the Republicans who are running with the ball on the top issues, the economy, immigration, and crime.
Give some context on this. Compare this when Republicans last took the House.
Yeah, let's compare it back to 2022. I think this kind of gives away the game right here. Okay, the GOP is more trusted than the Dems on the economy. It was 12 points in 2022. Slight decline in that lead, but still 7 points. How about immigration? It was Republicans by 3 back in 2022. Look at this. The Republican lead's actually gone up by 10 points. What are you doing, Democrats? My goodness gracious. And on crime, the Republicans were up by 13, and now they're up by 22. The lead, again, expanding by nearly double digits. So whatever Democrats are doing, it ain't working, Kate. It ain't working. Republicans have the lead on all 3 issues.
What's the reason that you are finding so far that's driving this?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all about the center of the electorate, right? You win with independents, you win overall. And what do we see right here among independents? Republicans still have a point lead on the economy. They got a 10-point lead on immigration. They got a 21-point lead on crime. The bottom line is, when you look at these numbers, Democrats should call their offices, because at this particular point, even if Republicans, or even if the public doesn't like what Donald Trump is doing, they ain't necessarily liking what Democrats are doing. And it ain't just a referendum on one party. You actually have to go out and beat that party. At this particular point, Democrats are not able to beat Republicans. They still
and again, this isn't as Donald Trump came into office. These are numbers from this month.
These are numbers from September of 2024. 5, we still find that the Republicans leading on all 3 of these issues. And of course, this economy will be the key. If Democrats are going to win, they're going to have to likely win on the economy. At this particular point among independents, you see that 1-point lead for Republicans. And overall, at least according to the Washington Post, they hold a 7-point lead on the economy overall.
Yeah, and of course, quite fittingly, what 2 political issues have Democrats obsessively focused on in the past 2 months? Immigration and crime. The 2 things I said repeatedly they were the most unpopular on, and they didn't believe us. Well, there you go. And by the way, you think those issues poll badly with independent voters? Just ask them how they might feel about the insane, deranged lunatics who are all over social media, all over their workplaces and their personal lives, celebrating and cheering the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You think that polls well with independents, leftists, right? And I've long said, the people of this country are actually with us on the issues. The only problem is figuring out how to turn them out to vote, right? Because the GOP has more low propensity voters these days. It used to not be like that, but these days than the other side. But now you've just given them the reason, Democrats and leftists out there. And I don't like that that's the reason, right? This is not the circumstance, certainly, by which I wanted that to happen. But don't say you weren't warned, right? Because this is the result of the second and third order consequences of what you did. You made a martyr out of someone, and now people are angry. People are pissed off. They're fired up. They're galvanized, and they have a reason to actually show up and do more than just vote, by the way. But just as kind of one example of how this is driving and spurring the realignment. And I'd have to imagine, again, that the left wing's massive, uncontrolled behavior is simply digging a deeper hole for Democrats going into this year's election. And I knew that, frankly, the other side was panicking about this from the moment I saw the coverage in response to Charlie Kirk's funeral. Number of things. They said it was dark, it was polarizing, it was divisive. And that immediately drove me to the conclusion, oh, so it was effective, right? They were saying, it got too political. And I responded, I mean, first of all, he was a political activist who was assassinated for political reasons. Of course, there's a component of this that's going to be political, right? You cannot ignore that. It would be like saying after 9/11 or Pearl Harbor that, all we should do is mourn. It's unacceptable. It's inappropriate to also, in the midst of the mourning, vow accountability for those responsible. No, that's ridiculous. That's silly. And of course, you've seen this new characterization. Another thing that made me say, bingo, they're really scared about this, is to describe the funeral as quote unquote Christian nationalism. Which I say, what does that even mean? But first, take a listen, then we'll explain for you again why this is really demonstrating the panic that you're seeing.
What you are seeing here is a movement called Christian nationalism that merges Christianity as it's been practiced in America for, centuries with a very specific interpretation of what the founding fathers wanted, what Aristotle wanted, going all the way back to the ancients. You saw Larry Arnn, who is the president of Hillsdale College and a proponent of this strain of interpretation of the Bible, merge Christianity and protecting the Western civilization values into one and the same thing. It's a very somewhat convoluted argument, but if you distill it into the right talking points, it really hits you in the patriotic heart area, as it were.
Okay, so there you just heard the brilliant take from MSNBC that, oh no, the Charlie Kirk funeral espoused Christian nationalism. And what is Christian nationalism, according to her? She said it, right? It is Christian values merged with the founding fathers, merged with Aristotle and the sort of Greco-Roman foundations of Western philosophy. To which I say, oh, you mean the values that America was founded on? Like, what do you think they are? Right? Oh, no, America might return to American values. That's a really bad thing. Like, seriously, what do you think the founding fathers and like the foundation of America is actually about? It was a group of colonies, with the exception of Maryland, who were primarily Protestant Christians. Many of them came to the colonies fleeing religious persecution and other things, right? Who set up a society that, yes, was based on a combination of Christian values, of some ideas from the Enlightenment, right? And Greco-Roman philosophy. But like, it's worth noting, even some of the ideas that we claim in America are supposed to be secular, like say limited government, free speech, those actually come from, for instance, like the Baptist church basically wanting a decentralized way that they could actually like worship in peace, you know? So I don't understand this argument that like there's, you mean to tell me there's no religious component to America's founding? There obviously is, okay? It doesn't even necessarily mean that you're like, we're beating people with a stick, forcing everyone to be Christian, but to pretend like there are no Christian foundations to American or Western societies as a whole is obviously ridiculous. It's silly. But of course, this is the term Christian nationalism that they're convincing us to be really scared about, right? And frankly, it's not something I've heard extensively since like 2022. But back then, I always found something very interesting about this, which is, you know, again, it's a buzzword, like what does it really mean? But when you break it down, what they're always saying when it comes to Christian nationalism just boils down to the simple idea that Christians should be involved in politics and that when they vote in politics, they should vote for their values. That's what they mean by Christian nationalism. That's the truth. And it's like, again, oh, you mean that Christians should do what everyone else does, right? Everyone else votes for the things they believe. What are they supposed to do? Vote for the things they don't believe, right? Should they not want to see their values or things they want in society enacted through the political system? Like, what do you, that is the purpose of the so-called democracy that they worship so much. But again, what are you seeing here? The left is really panicking because they're realizing, oh, wait a minute. Like the right wing in this moment is starting to understand politics. They're starting to understand how to actually win in politics. And that includes things like, hey, voting in elections that are not presidential, for instance, right? That includes, you know, using the mandate of a situation to push the agenda and enact the policies that they actually want. Oh no, we've been doing that for years, right? We've been, you know, doing BLM, let's do the crackdown after January 6th, all those things. But the right wing actually figured out our game. No, you can't do this. And this is exactly what I pointed out when, of course, they were saying that the funeral was too political or too divisive, but they were allowing, you know, Democrats to go on TV and just stoke race war and say these insane things and be 100% political, right? They weren't calling for Democrats to tone down the temperature, but Trump, hey, he's too divisive. What is that again about? It's not that they genuinely care about turning down the temperature. It's just simply that, oh, wait a minute. The right wing might actually like do stuff, not violent stuff, but just do political stuff. And when they come to the realization, and I think they deep down know, you know, they're actually the minority in this country, especially the radical left. Like we are the majority. We showed you the polls, but we're just not really that engaged. That when people actually get engaged, it's over for them, right, in the system. And I think that is the big picture situation you're seeing, whether it's the freak out over this so-called Christian nationalism, because how people might actually show up to the ballot box and vote for their values and vote for politicians that reflect their values, the national polling, the, you know, voter registration. This is it, right? This is the Charlie Kirk effect. And, you know, again, don't like that it happened this way, but I think he's looking down from heaven right now and seeing his life's work, especially honestly, his life work in general, whether it's faith, whether it's the political action, whether it's the Gen Z stuff, campus, all of it, being vindicated. And that's what happens when you create a martyr out of someone. But with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.